Hello, hello. Welcome everyone to our talk. I'm so excited. Today we're going to continue our series about mental health and why is it important and why are we making sure there's a platform that many people are able to ask questions. And so today's topic is last week we talked about stigma. Today we're going to talk about what's actually the truth behind mental health because I believe that it's a conversation that many of us, for whatever reason, we steer away from it. We feel insecure. And with it being mental health awareness month, we're going to just continue these conversations and even into the next month. So I'm excited for today's guest, just for multiple reasons, because I just love her and I've known her a very, very long time. But also just because I feel like this is a great way for both of our passions to come together. So before we get into the conversation about what is the truth behind mental health, I'm actually going to have her introduce herself. So go right ahead.
Okay, hi, my name is Loryn Kimbrough, and I actually just graduated with my degree in
Yeah.
clinical mental health. Thank you. So I'm like one of those COVID graduation people who didn't get a ceremony, but it's cool because I got something way better.
Mm-hmm.
But I just graduated with my master's degree in clinical mental health from Roosevelt University. In addition to that, I also work as a clinician at the Branch Family Institute, located on 111th and Western, where we specialize in individual, couples, family, and group therapy. In addition to that, we also do supervised visitation and supervised exchange. It's actually a Black woman-owned
Awesome.
private practice. So it's literally, I'm blessed to be there. I'll just put it like that. And we just do a lot of work in the community. In addition to that, I also am the founder and president of the Association of Black Counseling Professionals. And we are a group 30 plus members, and we just also commit or are committed to community service to marginalized and disenfranchised communities, but we also spread the message regarding mental health and the stigma and just the fact that, Black people, we don't have to run anymore.
Yep.
You have someone to talk to. And I think that it's important for us to be cognizant of our mental wellness because it's a part of our holistic wellness, physical, mental, spiritual.
I love it. And when we were talking about this conversation, I just love because we have 5 points we're going to hit today. And I believe it's going to help us with just what you just said. I believe that there's so many stereotypes about what it means to take care of my mental health and just what does that look for, especially in our community. And so I just want to jump right into our first topic because I believe, and again, as you all are watching, if you have comments, if you have questions, please pose them. I will be sure to display them while we're doing this talk. But our first point is simply mental health does not mean mental illness. And so I love when you shared that with me. Can you just expound on that more? What do you mean?
Yeah, so what I noticed just in enjoying the work that a lot of people's biggest fears are being diagnosed with a mental illness. And I think sometimes as far as being stigmatized, because we do understand, like with certain types of mental illnesses, it may have an effect on opportunities for us,
Yep.
right? So as a result, it's like, okay, do I cover myself or secure myself in regards to, the possibility of getting a job or driving a vehicle, operating a vehicle, or do I, do this work that I need to do, which is coming into therapy and working on the challenges that I'm experiencing. And so with that said, with mental health not meaning mental illness, you have simple diagnoses like a lot of us are experiencing anxiety, especially
Yep.
with COVID.
Yep.
A lot of us are also experiencing depression. There are some universal things that we experience. The other thing would be adjustment disorder. So we're always adjusting to new things in our lives. Especially when you get to the topic of trauma within the Black community. Trauma can stem from, our genetics, anything that is slavery onto race, redlining, onto disenfranchisement, just all of these different things that we've experienced as Black people. That's PTSD, that's trauma. So when we look at those things, these are the different areas that we typically focus on, like just the holistic side of mental health and healing. So, people can't be afraid of coming in thinking that, they have schizophrenia or something that's really more so on the developmental side.
Yeah, yeah. And I think a lot of times when we're talking about mental health overall, it could be really hard to think about, okay, well, when I'm talking about I'm anxious, or if I feel like I have a lot going on, or like you said, right now, a pandemic, everyone is feeling some kind of anxiety, right? They're feeling some kind of angst. And so a lot of times when we're talking about mental health and people are like meditation, and the reason I'm bringing this up because I'm like meditation or therapy or things of that nature, we're like, okay, does that also, I think for some of us, we can make that synonymous with depression, right? Like I'm anxious right now, I'm feeling some kind of way. Um, is does that mean automatically medication? And so I guess the question I'm asking is that when you have people coming to your center, or you're having these groups, like how do you help people to even want to have the conversation about mental health? Because I think that sometimes we're like, okay, I'm good, I'm not anxious, I don't have nothing going on, because I think eventually you're going to lead me to saying that maybe there's a little bit more. Can you kind of expound on maybe making people feel comfortable with even the conversation?
Absolutely. As a clinician, it's our job and our duty to build a therapeutic alliance with our clients. But in addition to that, it's psychoeducational, right? So sometimes we have to go in educating clients on what the process is, what that the fact that it's actually about them. It's not about us. And then also like letting people know that you're not being judged. Because a lot of people, like, we all have two faces,
Yeah.
right? And so there's one, you have your idealistic self and then you have your real self. And so a lot of us, sometimes when we are outside of the comfort of our home or our family members or close friends, we put on that idealistic mask. And the thing about the alliances and the trust is that we can only work on you from the inside out. So I can only help you based on what you show me. And if you're showing me perfection, then what do you have to work on?
Yeah.
So really the building of the trust. But the other thing about it is, and I want to stay on trust for a second, is that a lot of us as Black people, we haven't been treated the best in the healthcare realm, right? So as far as being in the healthcare realm, you have the misdiagnosis, you have a lot of Black women in particular who are going to the doctor with these health concerns, but they're not being heard. It's like their issues are being minimized. And that also started in slavery, right? So the issues that we have, if we're not being heard, or if we're not being understood, then it's like, why waste my time to go and talk to someone if you're going to just dismiss me anyway? So that's really the thing. It's really about building that trust and building those connections so that it can really be understood that we're helping, like you're helping me help you. But in addition to that, this is all about you, because at the end of the day, all I am is a mirror and a guide. So the work that's taking place is you. It's not me.
Yeah. And even what you just said, I want to just hit on like this trust issue, right? And so again, you hit on it. There's definitely reasons why we don't trust, right? There's reasons that people have issues when it comes to healthcare professionals. And it's not so much that, okay, I don't want to get the help. But again, like you said, history, Tuskegee experiments, right? We got all these different things that have happened in our community that leads to why we don't trust when it comes to the doctors. It leads to why we don't trust when it comes to our money. It's a whole lot of things. So people can feel like, okay, we don't want to do this because of X, Y, and Z. But I think you hit on an important point that how much more is it about like the relationship, like seeing in your clinic? Because I think another conversation we had last week is this understanding that it's not that Black people don't want to get help. Maybe they just don't feel the most comfortable with the help they're being provided. And so have you seen like an increase of, or even like, what's the field? Because I know you said it's a Black owned therapy, center that you work at. Have you seen like that being like, man, a thing? Like, wow, people are a little bit more open to come just because I feel like you even understand without me actually saying, because you just understand, right? You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm seeing an increase in the amount of Black American clients who are actually interested in getting therapy. And then I'm also seeing an increase in the amount of people who are actually interested in going into the field, Black people. Because to be 1,000% honest, Black people they want to see Black therapists. They want to see people who look like them. And so when we think about the trusting part, if I'm the police officer arresting you, the judge determining your fate, the teacher who failed you, the person, the CEO who didn't give you an opportunity, or the manager who didn't give you an opportunity, why do I want to actually talk to you on a personal level? Because therapy is very cathartic. And so in order to go deep, it's like I have to feel like I can go beyond the surface with you. And so with this, like if I see another Black face, okay, I'm talking to my auntie, my friend, I can make those connections, and I'm not worried about any I'm not really worried about being judged on that level as far as like privilege versus a low SES person, or I just feel like it's an equal playing field. Comfortable. So I think that that's what's most important. That when Black people are now seeing that there are more Black therapists that are available, now it's like, okay, I'm feeling like I can make those steps.
Exactly.
To at least make the appointment.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. I think that another important point is that our second point, which is when we talk about, okay, not only just the trust and how do I trust this individual, but this second point, which I think is also as equally as important, is that we all have issues, right? So we all are working through things. We all have things that we're trying to overcome. And so understanding that me working, we're trying to get to the truth about mental health. It has nothing like you're not abnormal because you have something you're trying to work through. Like we all have issues. You're not alone in this. And so I would just love to unpack that more of just, okay, as we're coming to the truth about why is this important, just acknowledging that actually we all have issues. Yeah.
So just considering the pandemic, we are all going through that together. And, me as a therapist, I'm not perfect. I'm human as well. So I can't lie and say that I haven't been depressed regarding not being able to go outside and do the things that I basically have been acclimated to do. I enjoy going to school, and just the fact that was away from me, it hit me pretty hard,
Yeah.
So when I say we all have issues and that you're not alone, sometimes we have to universalize what's actually going on, so people know that they have someone that they're talking to who actually understands what they're going through. So making those connections with clients is very important as far as like self-disclosure, because it's like, hey, you're going through some things, it's okay. Like, this is not like, some people will come in and say, I'm sure that what I'm about to tell you, you have never heard before. I'm like, I highly doubt it, but go ahead. Right. Now, there are some cases where I never heard it before, but keep my straight face, like, yeah, I actually have heard that several times. But universalizing the challenges is also very helpful in getting people to open up and discussing or divulging their truth. Because like I said, at the core of counseling is about, telling your truth. Because in order for us to really work towards what your core issues are or your presenting issues are, we have to get to the bottom of it, like genograms, like finding out how you grew up. What is your story? What are some of the patterns and behaviors, so that we can try to keep you on track and meeting your goals. So that's, yeah.
Yeah, and the thing I want to add to this, because we talk a lot about like during this time and during this pandemic, it's truly, it's hard for everyone. I think as in a thing I would want to encourage people, and I'm just thinking about like even me and my son, is just having those conversations within our home. I think that even growing up, like you're not alone. Us feeling like we have people before we even get to the therapist, that we can actually have those open conversations amongst ourselves, amongst our friends, amongst our children, because that's the beginning. Like I know for me personally, I was blessed that me and my mom are super close, right? But I do have people in my life that a big barrier was that, hey, in our home, we don't share our issues. Like you good, you shake it off. Like you gonna be okay. And going through a pandemic and going through this time, I've even seen like my son has had times where he's having issues, right? Like we even had an incident yesterday. He's like, I feel alone. I don't get to see my friends. Like, what's going on? And letting him have that space to be able to share, where instead of being like, okay, it'll be cool, you'll be all right. I think it's just important to be able to make that a norm within our households as well. Like, okay, you're not alone. And I think it also begins in our home of like kind of breaking some of those old myths of what happens in the house stays in the house, and is not looked as a weakness because I'm starting to share my truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Communication is key.
Yeah.
Communication is key. And it's like some people don't have those resources at home. And some people don't have those trusting relationships. I've had clients who actually have attempted to discuss their depression with their parents. And, their parents are basically like, you have so much, like you're young, you get everything you want, you have no reason to be depressed. And so in that regard, child or whomever it is, they feel dismissed and they feel alone because their parent believes that on the surface they're fine, but they're not really taking the time to explore, if this child is telling me something is wrong, then I need to believe that something is wrong. So you do have situations like that as well, where they're not able to have the communication with their family members.
Yeah. And I think that goes, you all, as we're talking about like this whole idea of like the truth about mental health is so important. Like we said, mental health is not a mental illness. Also, that mental health does not mean that you are having issues. You are not alone, because we all feel it. But I just love this third point, and I love this idea of looking at mental health like we look at every other part of our lives, like our spiritual health, our emotional health, our financial health, right? And so when we think about mental health, it's just as important as our physical health. I think we all can agree that I need to exercise. I need to make sure I'm feeding my body the right things I need. Just taking that same mentality and that same care when it comes to our mental health. So I just love and look forward to just you expounding on that part. How is mental health just as important as our physical health?
It's just as important, because if we think about life as a triangle, mental, like what you were saying, mental, spiritual, and physical, if one is off, does that not throw everything else off?
Exactly.
Like, because when we think about it, let's say that you might not look physically the way that you want to look, or you may have gained a little COVID weight and you can't fit into your clothes. So that instantly causes anxiety and some depression, right? Mm-hmm. So then from there, when you get into that, when you get to the anxiety and depression being thrown off, now your spirit is thrown off, because when I think of spirituality, I also think about discipline and routine. So to have the connections, when I'm saying mental health is just as important as physical health, sometimes all of those pieces have to be working in lockstep in order for us to be our true, to live out our full potential.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah. Have you seen, is it kind of delaying?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Oh, no, I was just saying, I love that point of just like you saying, okay, if one part is off, then it's going to offset another part. And so have you seen that even as a part of saying coming to get therapy or coming to get help, there's like, hey, also, how are you with your nutrition? Like, how are you with your sleep? How are you when it comes to these other areas? When it comes to counseling, has that also been a part of like some of the conversations you have with the people you help?
It has. I'll go straight to anger management, for instance. If a person comes to me and says that they're experiencing some anger management, the first thing I'm thinking is, well, how much sleep do you get? Do you suffer from insomnia? And a lot of times that's the case. So when we are not getting the sleep, then we're irritable, right? We're irritable. And then it's like we're unable to process information. We're unable to take constructive feedback. Like there's so many things that come along with just simply getting enough sleep. So I find that happening a lot. Yes.
Yeah.
In addition to anxiety as well, like anxiety, if that's triggered, you don't know what comorbid symptoms coincide with the anxiety. Like when some people are anxious or even depressed, they might binge eat. They might do some excessive drinking or drugs or something in that area. So one thing sets off another. And as you're feeling like you're trying to, I would say, self-medicate yourself, that's throwing off the physical part.
Yeah. And I see it already happening in the comments. So I just want to remind people we have 5 points. We're going to point 4. If you have questions, if you have specific questions for Loryn, one for myself, or anyone, as you see it in the chat, please put those in there, because I already have one that I see that I'm going to bring up when we get to the end part. But again, this is an open dialogue. So if there's anything that you're like, hey, I love more about that mental health part, I love more about what you mean, how are you able to dig deeper, that whole triangle, please put that in the comments and we'll address it. And so our 4th point, which is connected to the truth about mental health, is that we all need someone to talk to. And I think that, I know that kind of hits on some earlier points, but this whole idea of going to seek help, going to address your issues. We all need someone to talk to. Just like we talked about, we all have issues. So just kind of diving into that, so we can, I think the point of this, you all, is to make it just seem just a normal part of our everyday, right? I think sometimes we hear words like mental health or, I just think mental health is like a trigger for some, and not necessarily a trigger in the right way. So when we think about we all need someone to talk to, just kind of expounding more on how we can make this more of a norm in our everyday.
So I want to start by saying everyone, especially people in the customer service industry and retail, are all some sort of counselor, right? Because let's think about, how many times people go shopping or go to the bar or go to a restaurant and just find ourselves talking to someone, because it's comfort for us, because these people don't know us. They may not ever see us again. So if I'm going through something, I'm going to actually talk to the first person that I see. But we all need to talk to someone to talk to, because we all need a mirror. We all need someone to be there to show us, when we're at our lowest points, or affirm us and acknowledge when we're at our highest points. And I think that when we have that, then we're actually able to, make some form of change. Because like in a lot of cases, we don't know that we need to change unless someone tells us, or unless it becomes a problem for someone else. Now, if it becomes a problem for ourselves, then we also take the time to self-reflect. And I know in my program, when I first started, my professors were saying, you are going to change along this journey. And I'm thinking to myself, like, nobody going to change me. I'm good, you know. But I really, I did a lot of self-reflecting. And it was, you know, in order to be in this business, you have to recognize your own flaws. You know, and the thing is, you also have to be able to, or be willing, because like therapists, we have therapists as well. So when I say we all need someone to talk to, everybody has a story, or everyone has something to get off their chest. Because even if we're angry, for instance, when we talk about our frustrations, then it's almost like, I don't know how, I would say it's almost like the steam being released, or something being, something in you just moving out of you, you know, and holding that energy in, because mental health is an energy thing, and energy that's stagnant, it just brews and brews and brews until it explodes. But energy that's constantly moving and shifting, now you're able to actually process things, and you're actually able to, because you sounding board, that you're able to release your innermost fears and secrets, and anger and trauma, because the drivers of sexual abuse, of trauma, any kind of trauma, the way that they're able to get through their own healing or process their own healing is when they're writing books, or when they become advocates and they're speaking. Yeah, it's really important for us to have those sounding boards, or people who we can communicate with.
I love it. And I think it goes to a perfect segue in with what you just said about, we all need someone to talk to, but also just having this healthy mind is going to equate to a healthy body. And so, again, I want to just remind you all, as we're coming towards kind of like the close of this conversation, which I absolutely love, know that I see some comments and questions in the comments that we'll get to, but please pose them if you have any questions about how you could even, I mean, this is a safe space for us as well. You know, like you talked about that mirror. Like, we're in a space where honestly, we're creating a space for you to be able to, hey, this is something I'm going through. Can you give me some advice, or do you have any resources? And so again, put questions, anything that you have in the comments, and I'll be sure to address them as we go. So right now we're going to close with our fifth point of a healthy mind equals a healthy body. And I know you kind of got to that and some other things, like I said, but again, just kind of diving deeper on that point about this whole relationship between a healthy mind and a healthy
body. So when we think about anxiety, depression, and stress, it has a bearing on like our digestive systems. It has a bearing on it's really mostly our digestive systems and our immune systems, excuse me. So when we think about, for instance, and this is not me speaking as a medical expert, but when we think about how it's being said that Black people are the ones who are succumbing to COVID. Okay, let's think about all of the stressors that are happening in our lives, about the fact that we're working nonstop and we don't really get a chance, especially we don't get a chance to take a break. We don't get a chance to go on vacations. We don't get a chance to allow our immune systems or our bodies to heal from the inside out. But in addition to that, because of all of the things that are going on and the stressors that are occurring, it then weakens our immune systems. So now we don't have the defense to protect ourselves from a lot of these viruses. A lot of cases, a frontline worker least likely to take off. So that's another stressor, because you have to put food on the table. So being able to find a way to basically find your zen. I know my previous position prior to me transitioning into therapy, it was very stressful. And I didn't necessarily have an outlet. So not having the outlet caused me to develop what was called, like a bacteria in your stomach called H. pylori. And that comes from stress. Yeah, it comes from stress.
Oh, wow.
And it's are like symptoms are acid reflux related. So just based upon that alone, because in a lot of these jobs too, we're experiencing not only the stress of having to show up, but the stress of of our work being taken from us, people taking credit for our work, people demeaning us, people just really putting us in positions where we feel unaffirmed or where we feel beneath, right? So because of those things, it just really puts us in a position where our mental defenses are up, but then our body defenses are up, and then until they basically turn against you. I'll just put it like that.
And when you just said that, it just made me think about like, wow, that's so true, that a lot of times when we are consuming ourselves with these thoughts that aren't serving us or in places that aren't serving us, how that really is impacting our health and impacting our mind. I know when we were first talking about this topic, we talked about this current state that we're in, this pandemic. For many of us, this is like an opportunity to renew some things, right? It's an opportunity to say, you know what? I got laid off from that job, but I actually hated that job. You know what I mean? And that job actually gave me a lot of anxiety. It didn't provide for my family. It's not what I love to do. You know what I mean? And so how can I really capitalize on this time? And so I know it's a stressful time for us all, but how we can also use this opportunity to, for some, this is becoming like a place of anxiety. But I've seen people just on my timeline just as equally have had some anxiety or like, man, I'm actually starting that book I always wanted to start. You know what I mean? Or I'm going to take these classes that I never got the time to take. And so really being able to say like, man, a healthy mind is not just about meditation and about, all of that, but like, what am I really allowing myself to be consumed with in my thoughts? And so I would love, if we could even unpack that more of like, man, healthy mind is, what am I allowing myself to be always thinking about as well?
Yeah. It's so easy to be in a position where we're idle and we get these negative cognitions. It's easy to go there, but you actually have to actively go against those negative cognitions. And when I say that, I really mean that it's important for us to put ourselves in position to try to see the positive aspects of what life is offering us, because there are certain things that we can't change. But what we can do is in being people over our lives and our own destinies, what we can do is see how we can improve. And I like what you said about how a lot of self-reflecting has taken place during the times of COVID, because I have heard those stories as well of people who are inundated with work that they actually hate, but it also takes away from them pursuing their dreams. There are people who are in music who have a 9 to 5, but they just really want to be playing music. But because they're so consumed with their 9 to 5, they don't have the mind space or the brain space to think creatively. So it's like, for a lot of us as Black people, like, we invest so much in building other people's businesses and other people's dreams that it takes away from our own. So I think I really suggest people really take this time to focus on you. I mean, I know that there are other concerns, it's like financial concerns. But even with that, if it's something that where you want to go back to school, or where you feel like you are not really feeling satisfied or fulfilled, with what you're doing right now, okay, get your notepad out and start making a list of different things that you might want to do before the what is it called? Before the shelter in place is lifted, or after it's lifted. You know, what are some things that you want to do? So you always want to take on every opportunity that you have the ability to still and be peaceful to write and make your goals come to fruition. Anything, when I claim things, when I put it in writing, I know it's going to happen.
Yep.
Because I've put it out in the verse. So anything you say, that's why it's so important to speak positivity in your own life, because whatever you say, that is received.
I strongly agree with that. And I wanted to just be able to kind of bring up some of the questions that people have asked. And so you all, we're at the time where we're going to just kind of check in with the people listening in. And so the first question that I'm going to bring up, and again, if you have other questions, please put them in the comments. I will make sure that I will be able to address this. And so the first question I have is actually from my mama. Hey, girl. And her question is, does your office accept all insurance? Because most people think that they can't afford the help.
You are absolutely right, Cheryl. That is a wonderful question. So my office, we accept most insurance, but we do not accept all insurance, but we do have other options. We have out-of-pocket options, which are not horrible. And the thing is, you got interns for a reason, because if you see an intern, you know, you pay the lowest out-of-pocket price. So be open-minded in regards to not necessarily, well, basically everybody there has an expertise, and we're all good at what we do. So sometimes taking an intern is not bad at all, but they have out-of-pocket options. And then we have a program, it's a violence prevention program called Treat the Trauma. So basically it's for anyone from ages 6 to 24 who has a victim of trauma or violence, or who lost a family member to violence or a close friend. Basically those people can enroll for free.
So there's definitely a lot of programs, and as she said, like reaching out. When you said an intern, it made me think about when we go to the beauty schools to get our hair done. You know what I mean? I mean, they're practicing. I mean, they've been skilled and they've been taught, you know, what we need. And so the next question I'm gonna bring up is actually from Philip. And Philip said, how can we increase the accessibility of mental health care, especially for people who are naturally resistant to mental wellness?
Okay, now when we say increase accessibility, what exactly does that part mean?
Right. So, Philip, if you can put that in the comments, what you mean as far as the accessibility to mental health care, we will love to be able to dive into that more. I guess my initial thinking with this is, how can we, especially for people who are naturally resistant to mental wellness? Yeah, Philip, I don't want to assume what you meant by that, or maybe you want to dive in it, but please put in the comments what you think you want us to address.
Yeah, I can touch on it. So for people who are naturally resistant to mental wellness, like I was saying earlier, psychoeducation is really important. And I think the messaging really on our behalf as therapists is important. But then also, if you have experienced, if you work with therapists before, and you have family members who you see are in need of therapy, then it's important for you to, give your testimony and help them understand that it's okay. So, and this is kind of how I'm processing the question, just really communicating the importance of it. And because I will say, and I hate to put her on maybe exposure, but yeah. what I will say is, and I hate to put her on blast, but my mom, I was telling her, like, you should go and see a therapist. I think it's important because, you got to pay me. And I'm just playing. I can't, work with my mother because it's my mother, And so she would be complaining to me about different things. And it just got to a point where I was just like, okay, I'm shutting it down. I think you need to go see somebody. And so she was very resistant to that, right? But even though she was resistant, I was adamant. Like, I was very persistent with her. Like, this is what you need to do. That even, I had to even find a therapist for her. So me being persistent with her about it and me actually doing the work for her. Once I found the therapist, then I was like, okay, so now it's on you, because I did the groundwork for you. But in order for me to know that it's something that you actually really want to do, or you feel like you need to do, then you'll go ahead and take the steps, make the transition to pick up that phone and make your appointment. And eventually, it took several months, but she eventually did. And she has expressed to me before that it's the best decision that she's made. She thanked me abundantly for staying on her about it.
Yeah. And that actually led me to, so Sandra's on here, and I love Sandra. Sandra was actually on my second panel we had when we were talking to parents and just how they felt about this whole pandemic. And I just want to address something she said, and I want to love to hear your opinion on this. So she said, from an emotional standpoint, like, when is it my turn to address it? And I love that Damien asked, what did you mean? And she said, well, to recognize and address where I am when I'm so busy nurturing others. And I think that is something that's so prevalent in our families. And especially, I know in Sandra's case, she's a grandmother, like she's like the matriarch, you're probably the person everyone's pouring into and giving their issues to. But I think that is so important, because I think in a lot of times, who is giving to the giver? Right? Like, who is listening to the person that everyone is pouring out to? And so I think that it's important. I must just speak my personal, just living life knowledge, and then I'm gonna have Loryn come in. But I think so many times we deplete ourselves to a point that we just have nothing else to give. And what ends up happening is that in many cases, it's not going to be us telling people like, hey, I need a break. Hey, I need help. It's really about the boundaries we set in relationships. And I think in a lot of times people are going to take and do just as much as we allow them to. And I think when it comes to mental health, I even in myself had to learn, my grandma was talking about this, the power of the word no. Right? The power of no is huge. And no doesn't mean that I don't want to be there for you, but it also understands that I understand my limitations. So no might not be, I can't necessarily take you there, but I can help you get there. We can figure out a plan together, but I don't have to be the be all and end all. And I know that's easier said than done. And in many cases, in the households, the mothers and the grandmothers are the caretakers and the ones doing it all. But then we also, when we talked about healthy mind and healthy body, that's why grandma had high blood pressure. That's why we got all these other ailments in our bodies. Because guess what? In the midst of me trying to take care of everybody else, I forgot myself. And then when I forgot myself, then we're lost because we didn't have this person that we poured everything into. We didn't look after for them. And so that's my take, Sandra, is that it's about boundaries and really understanding, like, I want to be here for a long time, and no one can love and care about me more than me. Right. And so I would love to hear your take on it. But that's really huge. I think there's probably people on here listening like, look, I'm the breadwinner. I ain't got time to take a break to sit down and have somebody listen. You know what I mean? But you got to find that time, because if not, you're not going to be here long and be around here long.
Yeah, Jarima, you are spot on with boundaries, because that is definitely important, because we really are. I'm just gonna be like 1,000% real. Like, Black women as the mothers of the universe, we get typecasted into this role of being the strong Black woman. And so as a result, we feel like we have to live up to it. and B, everybody else feels like we have to live up to it. And that's just the real deal about it. And so I'm actually planning on getting my doctorate very soon, but I'm really going to be looking into research on resilience, the idea of resilience and how it affects Black women. Because I personally feel like don't call me resilient, because there are times when I actually want to be vulnerable. And I don't think we get the opportunity as Black women to be vulnerable. But then when we think about boundaries on the other end, we also have to look at being ourselves. Like sometimes, like when people actually try to take care of us, what do we say? I got it. Or we play like we're not as sick as we are so that people won't be able to take care of us. So just like we have to set boundaries for people, we also have to be able to receive when people are trying to care for us and do for us. Because I think we actually, as Black women, we feel guilty when we're being taken care of. We feel guilty when we want to take a nap or when we want to take a vacation or just do things for ourselves, because we're so used to being the nurturers and the doers and the go-getters. It's like, how many Black people, how many Black women especially do you know that will hold down a job or two, but also be going to school and also be taking care of children? Like, we actually have to be steadfast in taking time for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't echo that enough. And so when you say when, Sandra, is the time, I say now. And I love this next point. Amina said, but you have to be in a space to receive it, right? So you have to be in a space. I think also to that point, we gotta give ourselves grace. You know what I mean? I think that that's another thing. I think, and this goes to everyone on the line. I think a lot of times we got to give ourselves grace that, you know what, we don't have it all together. Maybe, especially if you're someone that's used to having it all together, it's hard to be like, you know what, I need to probably reverse my role right now. I know I usually have the answers, but I'm lost. You know what I mean? Or I'm usually the strong one. Right now, I need someone to listen to. And I want to just pull up again. Amina says, oftentimes managing fight or flight affects decision making, which is why being attentive to self is a priority. And I totally, totally, totally agree with that. Yeah, so as again, if no one has any other questions, we're gonna go into our closing piece, because it's always important for me when we have so many great things, you know, told to us, that what's the nuggets, what's the main things we need to be able to you know, be able to take home from this. And so and even I see here, like you just said, the Black woman being here, she said, I'm the head of the household with 3 sons with a co-parent. Again, those are real situations, right? Real things that can be, you know, be difficult. So before we get out of this, I really want us to say, okay, what is our call to action? Because we already know that mental health is not synonymous with mental illness, but what would be some main takeaways that you believe we need to consider when it comes to the truth about mental health? What are the main things we should walk away from this conversation?
So the number one thing that I would say is to be open. Be open to listening to yourself, listening to your body, self-reflecting, but also in listening to yourself, if you know that your challenges have gone beyond what you can handle, then you need to take that next step and go see someone to talk about it. Because in a lot of cases, we get to a point where even sometimes we may want to do harm to ourselves, and we don't have to get that. We don't have to get there. So that's number one, just being open and being honest with ourselves about knowing when to seek help and when, you know, self-medicating or trying to do different things for ourselves is not enough. Number two, I would say to think positive and put positivity out into the atmosphere, so that that you can start walking into your truth. Because once we start walking into our truth, I think that opens up the door for better understanding. Yeah. And it also allows us to really see the mirror for ourselves, or be our own mirrors when we walk in our truth. The other thing is, as far as your jobs and your financial situations are concerned, sometimes we experience a lot because we put a lot into our jobs. I mean, in a lot of cases, we devote 8 hours, 5 days a week. We devote more time to work than we do to our families. So don't take work home. Leave it where it's at. And in some cases, it's a check. Go get your check and keep it moving. Yeah. So that's because we definitely tend to do that a lot. Just bring those stressors of work home. And then the fourth, I would say, is just to utilize family members and friends. Even if you're not ready to come to therapy, utilize the people around you that you know, love, and trust to actually be a sounding board for you. And don't have to hold your feelings in, because when you hold those feelings and emotions in, you will have a breaking point, and you don't want to be there.
Yeah, I love it. I want to just highlight, because even Amina said that, like, when we don't check and really understand where we are, we can go to 0 to 100 real quick, and we don't want that to be the case in our situation. So before we close out, I just want to share, Damien Howard, who's on here, and Philip Yang, who's on here, are amazing two individuals that I'm doing this series with. They have an organization called Clever Characters, in which they do a lot of social emotional learning for schools and families. And so during the month of May, and we're probably going to take this into more months, we've been doing what's called parent hangouts. And it's been such a very healthy and just a wonderful space. We had our second one this past Wednesday. We had 5 parents on there. Each week has been growing, and it's really a space for us to just get to the truth of, like, what are we going through? Where are we going? How are we feeling during this time? And so each person who's been there have been so appreciative just to have just a community, right? Like, I might not be able to have that person at home I can talk to. And again, I want to bring this up because we meet every Wednesday at 8 p.m. on a Zoom call. So if you go to clevercharacters.org, you'll learn more about the parent hangouts. Visit www.versatiblebooks.org. Reach out to me. We can make sure you get connected. But I think it's just important, especially during this time, that maybe your normal go-to was Friday night, me and my girls do this, and you can't do that now. Just creating additional spaces that can be supports for you. And so again, putting it out there on Wednesday, and we'll have flyers and things going out through social media. But clevercharacters.org, get on their mailing list. www.versatiblebooks.org, get on my mailing list, and we will make sure that you get that information. I just want to check through these comments real quick so I can make sure I don't miss anything. Going on. See, they having a whole, girl, on this comment, they having a whole conversation. I feel left out. I feel left out, y'all. It's okay. I'm going to come back and read them, and I'm going to do my own little comments. But again, this has been a super duper thank you, Damien, for putting both our websites on there. So join our mailing list. Before we close out, I just want to say I love you so much. Thank you so much for this time. Thank you for your wisdom. I'm so proud of you, and just like seeing your growth. And I love it. Sandra said she's gonna call this Good Friday service. This is what I call a Good Friday service. Girl, you better come here every Friday and get this good stuff. But again, I just want to say I love you. I appreciate you. I look forward to, as you said, getting your own practice. And again, Loryn is dope. So if you want to get connected with her, let me know. Maybe that's what I want to do as well. So maybe can you share out maybe how people can stay connected with you? Because maybe, as we talked about the importance of feeling connected to someone as you start your journey, just having to connect. So maybe share where you work or some services they can stay connected with you. And we can put those in the comments as well, you all. But I want her to say it now.
Absolutely. First, I want to thank you, Jeremy. I love you to pieces. From the womb up, And I just really thank you for the opportunity. I mean, how often do you get to literally graduate and be on a platform like this? It's just so wonderful. And I really love what you're doing, and you keep up the good work because you are doing amazing things here. And I support you wholeheartedly. Okay.
Thank
but
you.
you absolutely, you can find me. So like I said, I currently am working as a clinician at the Branch Family Institute, located on 111th and Western. I always mess this up, but it's literally 11111. Yes, Southwestern Avenue. It's right across the street from the Beverly Arts Center.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can also, I'm currently not necessarily on Instagram, but the ABCP, so my organization, the Association of Black Counseling Professionals, we are on Instagram under the ABCP. So that's where you can find me now until I get my life together post graduation.
Right.
And get all of my social media up and running.
Awesome. And thank you, Damon. He's putting all that information in the chat. And so I will also get all of that from you as well and come back and put it in. And also, as you see in the chat, which I love, so last week, Philip led this talk and we talked about stigma. This week was me to talk about the truth behind mental health. And next week, Damien, who was on the chat moderating that for me, he is actually going to be doing his talk, which will be who can I run to? And that's what he's going to be leading next week. So that's going to be really, really cool to just talk about. I mean, in this talk about mental health, really, who are the people in your circle that really are helping you to be able to navigate through that. So that's going to be a dope talk. So again, you all, I just want to say thank you for choosing to be with us this Friday night. It's been really, really great. I appreciate those who are in here sharing their information as well. And this is the reason for this as well. I want to just kind of talk about it. Like, yes, we're giving information about how do you, keep your mental health in check and being able to share tips and ask questions. But I really love the chat and why we have this platform, because I think that so many times we don't even know what's available to us, right? So as we're having these conversations, every time I've had a conversation, people are in the chat like, oh, your child needs X, Y, and Z. Okay, this is where you should go. Like you're able to build community even through this chat. And so this conversation, you all don't stop it. If you have questions, we'll come back and answer them. If you have a resource that any free services, if you also need help, like put it in the chat. And this is what we're doing this for, because we definitely come back and address all questions. And I just think that I really believe in the village mentality. Like everything we need is within the village, right? I might not have it, but I can direct you to where you need to go. So again, thank you all who have been listening. Thank you for all your comments and being engaged. And we love you, and we look forward to seeing you next Friday. And again, thank you, Loryn. Let's clap it up for her. Awesome job. And we'll connect with you all next Friday. Take care, you all.